All right, so it looks like we are live and we still have a minute. Peace if anybody's watching. Um, Usually I pull it up on Facebook too to make sure. All right, so we're right at 6 o'clock. What'd you say?
I was saying I'm new to this thing too, so I'm not sure how to see if anybody's interacting.
Right. So yes, all right. Thank you, Zainab. I'm glad you're here. Good. So can you see and hear us just fine? Let me know. I'm still learning this eCam thing.
There's a lot going on.
I know. I can't even. um, and I know that there's a bit of a delay too. So, oh, great. You can see and hear us. Awesome. All right. So let me try to move a few things. Mar, you good with what you see here? Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to give it a minute, literally, for more folks to come on because I know there were people who were really excited about this particular session. And right now, in particular, it's wonderful. Hey, great, you're here. Yes. Is it Yakis? If I'm pronouncing it wrong, Yakis, can you just like put it out phonetically for me? Yakis is who asked for this.
Yeah.
Yes. Callie, peace. Thank y'all for being here. So I'm gonna take a moment. So we're right at 6:01. So I'm gonna start. Yes, Leslie's here with Jaya. Big hearts, big hearts. This is so good. It feels good to be in a space of joy and just be here with my black child and my black self in the middle of the tenaciousness, or tenacity is the better word, it's the actual word, tenacity of the myth of white supremacy, right, and the anti-black racism and all of the other layers of things that are piled upon us on a regular basis. I almost didn't want to do this because, okay, yes, Yaquis, got it. Thank you, sis. Got you. In the middle of all of this, I thought about like not doing it, I thought about that there were too many other things going on and maybe people don't really care about this right now. And I really had to sit and realize, no, like our lives go on. We got a whole goddamn life and wonderful things that we do. And so it's a pleasure today. I got to remember that the thing is up here. To bring Marley in. Marley accepted my invitation to come on at Yaquis's request to talk a little bit with us about the ways that she finds community online, specifically around her interests, because I know with Yaquis, I think it's your daughter, if I'm not mistaken, who's also into voice acting, and you wondered how, the girls find those communities, and you probably have maybe a little insight about Sage, like some of the things she does too. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna take a moment, like just a moment of silence, please, for everything that's happening, and then at the end of that moment, then I'm just gonna turn it over to Marley, and then I'll come back on towards the end. We're gonna talk for probably about 45 minutes, and then I'll come back on at the end. All right, let's take a moment, y'all. Let's breathe together, please. Named and unnamed Black bodies, honoring them and their families, honoring people who make a decision to do something about what's happening, whatever that activism looks like. Just want to hold space for all of that right now too. I'm going to take a couple more breaths and invite you to do the same. Thank y'all. All right. So I'm going to stand up a little bit to show off my Raising Free People t-shirt. And then I'll leave it to Marley.
Yes, so put the pen down. Okay. Yes, hello, welcome. Thank you for watching live and as well as in the replay. It is so great to see / meet everyone again.
We're going to be loud.
Oh, yes. So I'm Marley. I have been unschooling, self-directing for maybe 8 years now. Little less, little more, not sure. But I have found my way adequately to where I am now, and I wanted to give some insight as to how that process worked for me in giving tips. This particular episode and this day, it is going to be about finding community, specifically online, because that is something that we are always going to have access to. And it's just important to get yourself, as well as the people that you are teaching self-directedness, acquainted with. So before I even talk about my resources, what I wanted to be really, really clear on is that finding a community online, especially for a kid, is an extension of a skill of discernment. I'd actually call it a skill in and of itself. So yeah, I wanted to bring some awareness to that and briefly talk about why it needs to be given the same level of the same level of importance as you would anything else. Like, oh, they have to learn how to take the bus on their own. They have to learn how to drive. They need to learn how to be on the internet and find the people that they're interested in and stay safe on their own. So aside from the fact that it's just something that they're going to be growing up with, it's teaching them how to take care of themselves. Finding a community for something you're interested in is really different than just finding a community to keep you safe. And I wanted to have a lot of thoughts going on in my head, especially with everything that's happening. Yeah.
And it's okay to be with that. It's okay to shift. And also, this is where you can see what people are saying, FYI. But yeah, be with what's present, please. That's fine.
Yeah. So, yes, just trying to stay on track at the same time. So, okay, cool. Yaquis, your daughter is interested in writing. Me too. Writing community is huge. I'm going to wrap up this thought and then move on because it actually gave me a great idea. So learning about how to stay safe online is certainly something that you need to be invested in with your kid. It's something that you have to facilitate. You can't teach them how to keep themselves safe, if that makes sense. You can give them outlines, don't give strangers your phone number, stuff like that. But the world is constantly changing. There's a lot of things that, especially as they get into more niche communities, they are going to have an understanding of that you don't. And even the kinds of rules that you previously set may get them in trouble in their spaces. So it's important to lay the groundwork and not think that your rules are the be-all, end-all. Don't get to that schoolishness mindset of that just being the move. Like what I said goes for everything, regardless of context. So when you're teaching this, just keep in mind that you're teaching the framework and not the actual skill.
And are they teaching it? Is the adult teaching it? Because when I hear that, I think, are they teaching it or are they allowing it and facilitating it? Because not everyone on here is an unschooler. So when we say teaching, I'm not sure if people still think of that schoolish way.
Yeah. So I do think that there's a nuanced difference between teaching and facilitating. And the point between them is the mindset. So facilitating would just be putting the resources out, leaving yourself open to support, and it's mostly going to be observing. Teaching is more a hands-on thing that it puts you in a position of authority in a way that facilitating does not. You're the parent, so there's other stuff, but on a personal level, on a human to human trying to make something level, you're not presuming superiority over that person or any of their thoughts or any of their experiences during the time that you're trying to get to a good point. So that is an important distinction to make. You are facilitating here because, as I said, it's a skill that is going to shift constantly, and you have to be very prepared for that. You're not going to know or understand everything, and you don't have to. So on the topic of, Yaquise mentioned that her daughter needs a writing community, that sort of thing. It reminded me because I used to be on a lot of writing communities, and so I guess now we're getting into the tips on how I do it and how I survive in my communities. And the number one thing that came to mind was to have the discussion about their identity and how it's going to affect that space, any space. So they're not just going to be a kid in in a writing community. They might be a black kid in that writing community, and you have to discuss what that means. You have to say, look, these are some things that you're going to get. These are some things. Why is my voice like this? Yes, these are some things that you're not going to get, and what it looks like for them. So you have to be very clear that they are a person inside of this, because for me, it was really easy for me to get wrapped up in, well, I want to do this, I like these people, and I forgot myself a lot. So when I was treated differently, it was really confusing. I had no frame of reference. But something that would have been very helpful for me during that time was if someone said to me, like, you're still a black girl. You still I had locks. And that when I showed my face, when I was on video calls or something like that, that was going to be a huge part of my perception. So
I'm so glad you brought that up, and off camera being weird. Is it weird, y'all, that I'm off camera? But yeah, I want to make sure we do this unschooling style and talk. So that struck a nerve for me. Like, as your mom, I was like, oh my God, what you mean by somebody didn't tell you were a black girl? Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because we know that you're black, and we know that you identify as that. You're talking about like early on. Can you give us a little bit more? I guess it's a little bit more of an understanding of how that might show up, like that idea of your identity and so that parents can support their kids in that.
Yeah. So I will use the example of a creative space, because I've been in a multitude of creative spaces. There's been writing and poetry, dance. I've pretty much been in all of them over in different parts of the world. So it just always finds a way to show up, because especially when you're writing or expressing yourself, part of that is going to be expressing your experiences with whatever identities you have. And so a lot of people would not understand why I was writing about my hair, or when I was called a scary little black girl or something like that. Things that are just very different experiences that BIPOC, LGBT, etc. people have, that the quote-unquote normal, that the quote-unquote normal people do not. And it's important to discuss the conversations that could come up around that, because sometimes I felt like if somebody was critiquing my story, that it was more critiquing my experience. And sometimes I was right. Sometimes it was just me being protective of my craft, which is also important as a black person. You got to do that sometimes. But that level of discernment inside the discernment of being on the internet is one that is crucial to not only just having a developed skill, but also I think someone's longevity on the internet and mental health, if that makes sense. Because it's a barrage of information all the time. So, yes. There's a question by Zainab asked, was I in a writing/arts online group with adults? If so, wondering how I navigated adultism.
And I want to make sure you don't forget about the actual tips for how to do it. Yes.
So I'll move on to those. I just want to make
sure.
Yeah.
Whatever order makes sense.
As long as I got you. Okay. So yes, to reiterate, the question was, had I been in online groups with adults, and how did I navigate the adultism? If so, I really have to dig through my memories right now. It's been a while, to be honest.
You were definitely in groups with people of multiple ages. Some were like grown, because I remember years ago when you first started, and I was like, what? You said you had a friend for some language thing, or maybe it was Sage, but they were in their 20s, and I remember feeling concerned about
exchange.
it, but it was fine. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, definitely, it's the internet. You interact with a lot of different people, especially in an artistic space. So navigating adultism in particular, I don't even think I had the the context for what adultism or how to name it because I knew what it felt like to be talked down to, and I guess that's I mean that would be a form of adultism, but I just never had the name for it or knew how to adequately express that. Besides, I felt like I was being talked down to. Never had the frame of reference to associate it with it being an adult. So that's also a good thing via my last point about talking to them about what their identity means. If they're a kid, talk about how if they're going to be in a space with adults, then what that looks like and how to stand their ground, basically. Um, yeah, I'm really surprised I didn't think about it. It's good. It's good to think about all of these things, just going through the list. Have them do it on their own. I know a lot of people, when they say that they want to educate their kid on something, they want to sit them down and have a talk, but really sometimes all you need is to just kind of drop the information.
Yep.
So just be like, oh, you know, in this space, sometimes black kids hear blah, 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 and you just kind of let them sit with that. And especially if they already have an idea of what they identify as, you just kind of say, think about what that means in that space. I'm sure you've had an experience with it in the past, so just think about how that's going to translate online, which they've already had experience with that as well, likely. So, yes. Yeah. So, the actual tips that I wanted to give for how to find community, because I think the idea of how to be in these communities and how to find them and are intertwined, because when I say how to be in them, I mean how to be in them in a way that is productive for you or your kid, or you know, who's how it's productive for the person finding community, because it's a human thing.
And not harmful, not just productive, but also how it can feel safe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was when I first started going on online communities, my first task, basically, what that kind of came to me, but I'd already been thinking about it, was finding a group of people like me. And since I was in the anime community at that time, that was other girls on the app that I was on, and so we kind of exchanged information about who's what this says, things like that. Um,
Anime? What was the app?
yeah,
You recall?
no,
Oh, okay.
no, I don't.
Okay.
But it was just important to find people so that you didn't feel alone. Because even though the internet is huge, it can feel isolating, just like it can if you're in a physical space. So for me, it was important to feel like I had people looking out for me in a place that I hadn't previously been. Um,
So you just Googled it? Like, how did you actually, yeah,
yeah,
that community or subsequent ones?
yeah. So, gosh, it felt really natural, but going through it now. So the first app that I would recommend is Amino, Amino. It is an app and a website that has mini communities inside of it for everything: Harry Potter, writing, anime, fashion, everything, everything, everything. And it's also, the app is geared towards teenagers. If you just want to know that. But my experience with it was that it was a very welcoming community in every space, and it gave me a great opportunity to interact with people realistically. You know, it wasn't too. I was maybe 9 or so when I started using Amino, so it wasn't too uh, not confusing, but it wasn't too mature, if that makes sense. But it also wasn't kiddie ish. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to do this at this time and this whenever. It gave you the freedom to open up and find community inside that community, which is really helpful because you're already in a place. And so you start to make your own niche inside of that. So Amino, Amino, definitely recommend checking it out. The second thing that I would recommend, and this is kind of an umbrella, is just to utilize the things that you use. I know you guys use Facebook, Twitter, maybe Instagram. If your kid's probably using them already, I think it's just having the conversation about how to utilize it to find the community that they're interested in. It can be very difficult because, as I said, online is vast, but if you make it a goal, an intention to find that community within these apps that they're already on and have already expressed that they enjoy, it's going to make the process a lot easier. So thinking about the things that you already use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, other things, yes. Third reference or third suggestion is YouTube. YouTube is massive. Like bigger than any of the other ones, I feel, at least, because there is such a wealth of information. The comment section alone, you could probably get a group together of at least 10 people in there. So YouTube was really great for me, especially when I started learning languages. There's a huge Japanese and Korean community on there. There's also a huge book review community, which I've recently become a part of, and they branch off into their own little groups. The people that own the channels that are making these videos often have their own fan groups where people can interact there, and from there they break off more times than not. So interact with YouTube really deeply. Don't just watch a video, like it, add it to your playlist, whatever. Go through the description, look at the cards, look at the titles, the comments. As I said, always the comments. Those alone are probably going to give you a pretty good head start.
Because then you find people in there and you might respond to a comment, and they might comment about a group that's related to the video, like those sort of. That's so dope.
Yes.
Love it. I'm taking my notes too.
Yes. Yes. So Amino, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, in their own little bubble, and YouTube. If you have a teenager, basically, I would say, because I've been on it for a little while, 15 and up, I would recommend Yubo, and that is YUBO. It's a bit like Snapchat mixed with Instagram. So what people do there is that they have live chats, and so it's either video or audio of up to 10 people with an infinite number of people listening in, and you can talk about anything at all. I specifically use it for debates.
She be so loud in the room, y'all.
Yeah. I've stayed up many a nights debating. It's been really helpful for me to get my emotions out. But for me, I found it helpful in specifically teaching me how to structure my emotions. So if that's something that you've been discussing with the person you're facilitating with, I think Yubo is going to be a good option for you. And again, that particular one, I would say, takes a lot more discussions around your identity than another one would. Like YouTube, you can kind of jump in and out, but if you're on Yubo, there's a lot of experiences that I've had that have made me it fucked with my self-esteem a little bit, and so I want to make it very clear that that's a discussion that I would recommend having. But again, from a facilitation standpoint, not we're going to tell you what your life is like. Just talk about I want you to be documenting your feelings, or I suggest that you document your feelings. I want to know how you're feeling with this whole thing, because it is a very raw community.
Is that why you said 15 and up as a range?
Yeah, and then also because everyone on that app is pretty much 15 and up, and it's like when I went to a homeschooling conference in California, they had a rule for the teen spaces, which was basically technically anybody of any age can be in there, but it's just about your maturity and understanding how other teenagers are going to be interacting. So if you have a kid that is younger than 15, but they are they understand how everyone is going to be interacting, the words that they're going to be using, the things that they might see, good or bad, as long as they have that context and they and you feel like they're not ready, but at least in a healthy spot with that, then I would recommend it. But generally speaking, anybody 15 and up that's been on other social media will find Yubo perfectly appropriate and helpful. Yeah. Yubo is how it's spelled. Yeah. So, I'm just going back over them. Yeah, so YouTube, Yubo, Facebook, and then Instagram, Twitter. Yeah. Yeah.
Amino, you said already.
Amino, yes. Yeah. And those were the ones that I personally found very helpful because these are all very broad. I do not go on a lot of niche websites. I kind of just make my own communities and things, and all of these apps have made it very easy. So even if you have a kid who's very apprehensive to assert themselves or somebody who prefers to just go into a space that's already been made, these apps make it very easy for them to interact in any way that works with their personality, with their intentions. Yes, all of the things that I just mentioned are an app or have apps, but Yubo specifically is an app. Yes.
Yeah. I also, one that you'd brought up before, or maybe it was Sage, that I found interesting was Hello Talk. You know, could you just kind of give us a little bit of a description of how you use those things, especially since y'all do a lot of language connection stuff, which ties to culture and all these other beneficial things.
It's perfect, actually, because we just got a question from Pam about that, about what did you do when connecting with groups when you started learning languages. So language learning is probably the only one where I feel like getting super specific is going to be helpful for you because every language requires that you learn it differently. And so if you are in a community that understands the rules or at least the broad suggestions of learning that specific language, it's really going to save you a lot of frustration about not progressing. So Hello Talk is a great one. It is both an app and a website, and it's about language exchange. It has its own social media feed where you can upload things in either your native language or a language that you're learning and have people correct you and interact with you. I used Hello Talk for Japanese. It was fabulous. It was great. I made a lot of connections on there, a lot of which I have to this day. So they've been running for months at a time. Hello Talk is great for people of pretty much any age because there's people of every age on there. Sometimes I see like 12-year-olds and I'm like, I want to make you my little sibling on this app. But it's a very good community. They have their own chat feature, but most people kind of branch off to other things. So some people use other messaging apps, particularly for me, because I was learning East Asian languages. People would use messaging apps like Line or Kakao, but you can just download those as an extension of learning. But Hello Talk on its own is great. If you are looking for more one-on-one tutoring, because Hello Talk is just language exchange, right? So it's directly person to person, and that's why it was helpful for me. But if you're looking for more tutoring, the other one I would recommend is italki, and that's italki. It uses a lot of different people who have like their whole LinkedIn bio is basically just teaching languages, and they offer free trials for a lot of things. I started taking Japanese on there as well when I was super, super young. My first class went really well. And it also has an exchange feature, but it's primarily focused on teaching, primarily focused on tutoring. So if someone is really intent about getting that focused, one-to-one, let's talk, I know what I'm talking about, I'm going to teach you. If they find that helpful, because sometimes I find someone teaching me as opposed to facilitating helpful, italki is the way to go.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Oh my gosh. So I don't even, okay, like 1 minute. I'm so glad that Marley brought up the idea that there are times, many times, where she wants to be taught, right? Because if someone is opting into being taught, that's still facilitation. Because what you're doing is you're not, as you said, making a determination of superiority and assumptions about what the person needs, because that's typically how teaching goes. And we have some people on here like Leslie who were teachers who didn't even get down like that when they were teachers. But generally, that's how teaching works. But if you are nurturing self-directedness, it doesn't mean that you don't get specific one-on-one instruction. It means that you don't get it from a coercive place. It means you opt into it. Because Marley, unlike Sage, my other daughter, this daughter loves more of a conventional structure in a lot of ways, whereas Sage does not. She needs a very different thing. But then there are times where she does want direct instruction, like when she, for guitar or singing or whatever. So I don't want y'all to think that as we talk about self-directedness in the broader sense, it doesn't mean that it is devoid of one-on-one direct teaching or instruction, but it's the mindset, as you said,
Yes.
because you know that it's the person is opting in and that they are centered and their learning is centered as opposed to whatever information you want them to get.
Yes, and this is definitely the resources and experiences that I'm giving are definitely what I would consider my definition of community. For me, community is a bunch of people, but for someone else that could just mean one or two people that they really vibe with and that they can really go deep with. So I saw that Yuquis asked about what is it possible on these apps and platforms to learn with the same people? Yes, most of them that is possible. The only exception is italki, which, as I said, is one-on-one tutoring, but all of these are social platforms or social media, so they're all focused on getting groups of people together. A lot of people migrate from app to app, but especially Amino is super helpful because you are in individual groups. It's like being in clubs in a school. Can't believe I'm using a school example, but that's what it's like because you're under the umbrella of Amino, but everybody inside has very specific points and things that they want to get done. And so if you're looking for a large group, but a group that's still very focused, every Amino is going to provide that in a different way. Another language resource, because I know a lot of people may not be visual learners, and a lot of these apps are based on writing and reading. So I would recommend Talk to Me in Korean, which is specifically for Korean, but they do have versions for other languages that just have kind of like a play on the name. But if you Google Talk to Me in Korean, you'll find other examples. It is a podcast, but it has a very active community on SoundCloud. They also have their own website where people can post their comments and discussions. Duolingo also has communities for each language, so if your child is interested in language learning and they are not using Duolingo community, I would highly recommend that they at least check it out, because I have been saved a lot of anguish getting things wrong from the Duolingo community. So,
and what was so it's
yes.
Talk to Me in Korean.
Talk to
or
Me
play
in
on
Korean
that.
is if you're more of an audio based learner, because it is a podcast. Looking into language podcasts on any platform, YouTube included, is very helpful. Sometimes I just need to hear things, but I am mostly a learner through writing and reading, so that's where my recommendations are geared towards. But all of them are helpful. I need all of them at some points in time, and I feel that everyone does as well, because even the most audio-oriented learner is like, wait, I want to read it, and then they have access to these resources, right?
Yeah. When you were doing voice acting, since that's one of the ones that came up, did you already mention specific apps around that, or any tips that you could offer for voice acting? Because I do get that question a lot, and I want to be able to just refer to this.
I'm very surprised how many people are interested in voice acting now. First off, back in my day, it was just like the hardcore anime fans who were just getting their stuff together with their iPhone mics and posting it on YouTube. So I'm really impressed and happy with how many people are coming up with this. But specific apps, the best thing about the voice acting community is that there is a lot of crossover between professional platforms and casual platforms. And for me, that was a really interesting experience because I wanted to be a professional voice actor, still do a little bit. And so I got to see how people interacted in different things. So my top two recommendations for people that are looking for voice acting community are Behind the Voice Actors, and that is, it's a website where people, it's kind of like IMDb but for voice acting, but they have a separate section called Casting Call. And that is where people are going to put up their own voice acting projects that they want to know about. And you can audition there. They'll tell you, oh, we're going to move from here to Skype. They give you all the details. It's like the projects are huge. And it was really helpful for me learning how to manage my time, manage my auditions, all of that. So Behind the Voice Actors, and then you're going to go to Casting Call. The second website that I recommend is also called Casting Call, but it's Casting Call Club, right? CCC. And that is pretty much the same as Behind the Voice Actors, except it's much simpler. Behind the Voice Actors kind of acts like a Wikipedia page, whereas Casting Call Club is more, it's simpler than that. I got into one before the other, and it was really shocking going back and forth. But Casting Call Club is a lot simpler. You can also look at paid gigs on Casting Call Club, whereas you cannot do that on Behind the Voice Actors. So that's notable. I wasn't really like interested in earning income through voice acting at the time, but these projects, like even if it's just a little $5-10, it's a great way to have your voice out there and to start and learn how to be professional in some aspect, even if it's just a casual thing. The overlap is super, super helpful, in my opinion.
Got a question here about D&D.
Yes. Question about online recs for Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, if they're already on Discord, yes. Okay, so I had to go through that process. I have an answer for you. First place to look is Reddit. Reddit is very similar to Amino in that each one is niche, and the Dungeons and Dragons Reddit is going to have a lot of open games, people looking to play, and I would recommend going on there because in addition to wanting to make groups, there are also people sharing tips and tricks, having discussions about certain kinds of things. It's just a bunch of people that are really passionate about it in different ways, and so you can easily pick and choose how you want to interact with that hobby. So Reddit, Reddit, and from there I would also recommend Discord. Discord is an app similar to, what would I even compare that to? People mostly use it for gaming, so it would make sense that Dungeons and Dragons is on there, but Discord is a social media app as well. Everybody makes their own group where they can use voice calls or video calls, and everyone kind of talks on there. You can share media. As I said, they just added the video feature, so anybody from Reddit is also going to transfer over to Discord 9 times out of 10. So Reddit and Discord for Dungeons and Dragons, and pretty much anybody who likes any kind of game would recommend Discord for you. There are a couple questions that just popped.
And do you need me to do anything? Like, is it helpful if I read it, or you can just take your time and go through?
I'm good.
Okay.
An example, so 2 questions. So can you give an example of when you first found the voice acting community? So I actually came into the voice acting community kind of from the Japanese language learning community. So there were people that had a crossover with wanting to do voice acting, but wanting to do it in Japanese. And so that's kind of where I came in. A lot of my friends who were much older than me had been doing voice acting for a while. They invited me onto Skype to just read a couple lines because I had been watching anime and thought, why not? And from there, it kind of became my obsession. So the working, it's like I said, it's not at all dissimilar to a professional environment. So once you decide to work on a project, even if it's for free, even if it's just something casual going on somebody's YouTube channel, there is a lot of correspondence because the creator of the project is, depending on their budget, also going to be the person that's mixing. And so they're going to need you to send in your voice notes, send in your auditions. They might need you to edit a little bit through Audacity or something like that. So I latched onto all of that very quickly. But if you are in a voice acting community, there's also tons of people around to help, especially on Casting Call Club. There is a lot of people.
Let's let that noise go. I can't tell it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yes. So on Casting Call Club, there's also a good mix of people who just voice act and people who are also there to help the project creators. So there's always going to be someone that is willing to help you or even take on some of the things that you need help with. So Casting Call Club was a really great starting point for me. I had a couple run-ins with people, but because I was able to discuss it with my facilitators, aka my parents, it became just a learning moment. You know, I took my time with my emotions, but it didn't stop me from further enjoying what it was that I was doing.
Okay.
Yes.
Want to make sure. Okay, good.
Yes. So another question from Pam, and that is, what do you think about doing a kids or teens unlearning community, sharing the ways that you learn things? I think you and Sage figure out to help learning each other yet. I think an unlearning community. Have I been in one of those before?
I don't know, but it sounds like a dope podcast idea.
For frame of reference, everything goes well in a podcast. If you're just wondering how to get any message out, any project, a podcast, it's normally very easy.
Yeah, collaboration.
Yes. So specifically in unlearning community, I heard that you had the concern of stopping other kids from thinking outside the box. I think that's dependent on their mindset when they enter and the mindset that the facilitators are facilitating in the space. So, for example, I went to an ALC, and that was, by the time we got there...
Agile Learning Center,
yes,
by the way.
I went to an ALC, an Agile Learning Center, for about a year. By the time we got there, they already had their thoughts in place, their ground rules in place, and we were able to just kind of add on to that, edit it as we as a community, we as a whole center saw fit. And so I personally never felt like I was unable to think outside of the box of whatever rules we had in place, because we had developed a culture of being really honest about what we wanted out of that space. So to answer your question, if you were, first of all, I think that is a good idea. I think an unlearning community for kids and teens is an excellent idea. And it's about facilitating, or it's about propping up the idea that the culture is supposed to work for everybody, and that you can be honest. You can say, I don't like this. I like this. I mean, somebody disagreed with me, but I feel this. All of those things are important to have in the space, and also important to address as though they're meaningful. You know, don't just one-off it, be like, great, thanks for your opinion. Really put the time and emotional labor in to have that discussion around what that means for the culture and how it's going to work long-term, and long-term could even just be a week in the future. So I feel as long as you have a culture of honesty and thorough critical analysis, that it would be very beneficial for everyone involved.
And the identity conversation that you brought up too would absolutely fit in there as well.
Yes. One of my favorite things about self-directed education as a whole is that it's my experiences with it have been that it's much more focused on making sure that you are comfortable with the various identities that you have than I don't want to say traditional because it's not tradition, a conventional school. Yes, so a lot of conversations at my Agile Learning Center came up around racism and what it looks like to be transgender in Atlanta, specifically in Atlanta. And, tons of different conversations. We had posters up everywhere that was like, it's never too young to talk to people about race, because we had everybody of every age. At the time, I was the oldest, 13, and our youngest was maybe 5. We really did have the conversation between every age, and we never segregated specifically by age. It was about what, in conjunction with the parents, the kid felt they were comfortable understanding or discussing. So we wouldn't put the 6-year-olds like quite with police brutality yet, but we still definitely talked about what internalized racism looks like, what microaggressions look like. We'll never forget when I heard a 7-year-old say that's a microaggression, and everyone was so serious about it. It was like one of the best moments of my life. I was so happy. So yes, putting these kinds of conversations first, and as I said, making sure that there is adequate emotional labor and critical analysis around them, because I feel like a lot of the times, even when people mean the best for these kinds of situations, because they are stuck in their own schoolishness or their own adultism, that they just kind of discount whatever emotions are at play in the space as they're going to blow over, or it's just kids having emotions, when emotions don't just happen. They are not necessarily indicative of something, but there is a cause. And so you have to look at that cause as a larger discussion so that your culture can become one that is very intent on thinking things through in that aspect.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yep, so those were my tips. I can go over the apps again just one more time, because I am really excited about seeing how these work out, because they were so helpful for me. So I'm going to go over them one more time. Amino, Facebook, YouTube, Yubo, Hello Talk, italki, Talk to Me in Korean.
And Talk to Me in Korean, they can Google the play on that too. So Talk to Me in any language, they can look to see.
Talk to Me in any language. Just language podcasts in general have excellent, very active, very focused communities around them. So any and all of those resources, to any degree that you see fit, I think is going to be an excellent start. And keep me posted, because I want to know how this is going for y'all. Yes.
Thank you, Marley.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to try to lean over here and get a spot. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful. Like, I literally was taking down some mental notes, and I was like, Akila, it's going to be recorded. Calm down. But really grateful, because it's wonderful. I think it was wonderful that Marley didn't just talk about the tips, which is what I thought she was going to do. She talked about the context. She talked about discernment. She talked about identity. She talked about intentional culture co-creation. She talked about self-directedness as something that can also include, as she mentioned, really specific instruction that comes from, what we consider a schoolish mindset. I think there's a lot here for us to be with. And so whether you're live, thank y'all so much for being live, or whether you're watching the replay, I encourage you to put your thoughts and comments, in this thread. The point of these lives, I do them in this group for various reasons, but this one in particular right now is about helping us to understand ways that we can still feel like we have a sense of autonomy, right? And that our children can feel like that. And we also can celebrate our joy, particularly as Black folks here, because we can carry the weight of so many things and feel like everything we need to do, hey, mommy, feel like everything we need to do is centered on resistance and, pushing and struggle. Dude, that's a part of our situation. but also a part of our reality is joy and community and connection and learning different languages and being in spaces where who you are or who you're becoming is valued and seen and heard. And I think there's a lot of that. Yes, I'm loving the hearts. I think there's a lot of that really embedded in what Marley talked about here. So we so appreciate y'all showing up. We appreciate you watching the replay. Invite other people in here so they can get some of this as well. I'm really grateful for this space, and I'm going to continue to do these lives. I've been doing them around the Deschooling Release Party series, but some other shit came up, as y'all saw, and I'm really trying to be present with that. So, Yaquiz, thank you so much for asking the question. Anyone else in this group, when you have specific questions, feel free to pose them, and I will do my best to source answers for you. All right? Plenty love, and hopefully I will connect with y'all over on the podcast, and talk to you soon. Peace, everybody. Be safe. Now, how do I end this?
No,
There it is.